Welcome to Health, Wellbeing and Lifestyle, where professionals in the field inform, educate and inspire the community to be healthier, more balanced and live the lifestyle they love. Our first guest today is Marc Noyce, and he's an urban food specialist, and the topic we'll be discussing is the joys and benefits of creating your own urban garden. Welcome, Marc.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for coming. So Marc, what are the joys and benefits of creating your own urban garden?
The joys of urban gardening are multiple. There are so many joys of urban gardening, which include your own nutrition, your mental health, contacting and being in contact with your friends and reconnecting with your family that you haven't seen, your long lost aunt that you haven't seen for a while. Urban gardening just gives you that excuse to knock on the door and say, hey, I've got some food. Would you like to share a meal with me? I grew this in my own garden. And that's one of the things about being able to give, being able to look after something, looking after your own nutrition, looking after your friends and family. And that's really what the joys of urban farming is about. It's also about knowing where my food comes from. You know, growing your own food, you know what went into it, you watched it grow, you watched it mature, and then you know exactly where that food comes from. And not only that, it's fun. It is just fun to come home and see your garden. Like sometimes I talk to my plants. After a long day, I go out there and I say, hey plants, how you going? And they seem happy to see me because if you give them the right things in terms of sunlight, water, food, they look after themselves. So not only can we have individuals growing food, we can actually have communities growing food. And I get involved in schools, I get involved in community gardens, and where from nothing a community comes together, and sometimes people are quite isolated and they don't have any friends, they don't have any family nearby, and they're living in a very small space. So to be able to come to a urban farm and meet people, share food and share stories of how to grow food and tips and tricks. Schools are absolutely fantastic mechanisms to get young people into urban farming. Learning from the ground up how to look after yourself, how to look after others, from growing your own food at home and getting in contact with your food and learning about where your food comes from is just setting up a whole next level, next generation of urban farmers to be self-sufficient.
Marc, I live in a small urban environment. How can I overcome some of those challenges in creating my garden?
In cities, we live in a concrete jungle. Sometimes there's not a lot of space, sometimes there's not a lot of light, and we're busy too. So sometimes we don't have a lot of time to give to our plants. So these are real challenges. Wind's a really big problem in urban environments. It can get very windy. There are stray pets, there are bugs, there are things that want to eat all our produce. It seems like everything's against us in an urban environment. But these challenges can be overcome when you have the right technology, when you have the right approach, when you get your nutrition right for your plants, when you get the watering right, and if you can get your plants to self-water, if you can get your compost, you can close your nutrient loop by composting your own green waste at home, turning that into a resource for plants to grow, and closing our nutrient loop is really a great way of being self-sufficient and overcoming these challenges that cities have where our food waste is a one-way street. We can turn that around. Cities also have abundant stormwater or rainwater runoff, so we have an abundance of water, we have an abundance of nutrition in terms of food waste. We can turn those around in an urban environment to grow healthy, nutritious food, and we can do it in really small spaces.
What are some top tricks and tricks for our audience to create their own urban gardens?
It depends on what you're going to grow. So if you want to grow tomatoes, for example, they need a lot of sunlight. They need like up to 10 hours of sunlight a day. If you want to grow lettuce and herbs, well, some of these plants can survive and thrive, if you like, on only 4 hours of sunlight. So it really depends on where your balcony's placed, where your sunlight comes in, and what you want to grow. So knowing a little bit about the types of plants you want to grow really helps set up where you need to put them, helps set up your urban farm in terms of what produce you're going to get out, and you can grow a lot of food in a very small space. In some cases you can grow up to 25 kilos worth of food in just 1 square metre, which is amazing. So if you think about what an average person would consume in Australia, and that's 75 kilos of vegetables per annum. We should eat 150, but only 5% of Australians get to 150 kilograms of vegetable matter per annum. So we can get our average food consumption in only 3 square metres, which is amazing. So a tip would be find a space that's relatively sunny. Try to protect your plants from the wind as much as possible with either netting, and get yourself a wicking garden bed. Now, if you don't know a wicking garden bed, if you've ever put a dishcloth into the water, you see the water rise up out of the water up the dishcloth. Well, that's wicking. That is capillary action. So that's what draws water up from a water reservoir. And a wicking garden bed allows you to have a self-watering pot plant that has a water reservoir that is always making water available to the plants. And so if a plant has access to water whenever it needs it, it's going to be optimal, it's going to reach its full potential, and you're going to have a healthier garden every single time. Get the other things right in terms of soil nutrition, which is a high quality compost, something very fibrous to help draw that water up out of your wicking garden bed or your self-watering pot plant, and your plant will be as healthy as it possibly can. Get the right nutrition into the compost, and it'll have all the trace elements that it needs. So a good quality potting mix is essential. You can make your own potting mix by composting at home, taking your green waste and turning that into a nutritious source of food for your plants. And technology's come a long way with wicking garden beds these days. So you can have free draining and wicking in some of these systems, which is optimal.
Thanks, Marc. That's such good, useful information. If you'd like to know more about Marc Noyce and the benefits of creating your own urban garden bed, please go to his webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we'll have another interesting guest with another interesting topic. Stay tuned. After the break, psychic medium and author Anthony Kilner will be talking about how ghost investigations work. Welcome back. Our next guest, Anthony Kilner, is a psychic medium and author, and the topic we'll be discussing today is how do ghost investigations work? Welcome, Anthony.
Thanks, Megan. Lovely to be here again.
Thanks for coming. So what is a ghost?
Right, so what is a ghost? Ghosts are really interesting things because we're talking about the spirit world. Now, there are a lot of people that say ghosts don't exist and that it's something else. However, as a medium, I'm going to believe that ghosts exist. And so we have different types of ghosts. So we have our ghost that's a typical ghost that's stuck somewhere, that haunts a house or a building, and they haven't moved on and they're just stuck there. And an etheric being, as I would refer to them as, is a being that when you talk to them, they will interact with you. Whereas as we move up the scale of ghostliness, you can connect telepathically with a spirit and talk to them that way. But most of our hauntings and most of the stuff really involves what we call etheric beings or beings that are just stuck here. Now, when we go up the levels, we meet other spirit beings, and they're not necessarily what we call ghosts, because ghosts are all about haunting and causing trouble and moving things. But our spirit people can move things too. If mum or dad or someone in the spirit world wants to move your keys or put a picture down at home, they're not doing it out of nastiness, they're doing it out of a sense of fun. So there are good spirits and then there are some not so good spirits. The underlying thing about ghosts and ghost investigations and things like that we do is to try and work out, okay, what is the spirit in the space, right? What do we need to do to help them, and how do we do that? And the main thing is 9 times out of 10, a spirit that's stuck here is a spirit that has a message that hasn't come through. And so our job as the medium is to help them. The main thing is we've got to give the ghost a choice. So we go in there, we connect up to what's in the space. Okay, yes, we've got, little Johnny is the spirit here. And so we help them get energy. And by getting energy, it means talking and communicating with them. And then that helps them to then make a choice to move on for their best and highest good. And the thing I love about ghosts is they've got personalities. Now they might be angry and they might be doing stuff that's not nice. However, they've got a personality. They can react to you. The other thing is understanding that people quite often say they've got a ghost and it's haunting them or it's scaring them. The difference between how it feels, does it scare you or does it make you, okay, yeah, I know who it is and I know what they're doing. If that's the case, you don't need to do anything. It's when things start to get a bit nastier than that you've got to maybe get somebody in to help you to understand what's going on in that space.
So that sort of leads us into the next question. What is a ghost investigation?
The objective of any investigation is to let's be skeptical and say, if there's a ghost here, what is it? And then disprove everything else around it. So if you're hearing a door knocking or something like that, go around, see if there's an open window, see if there's wind coming in that's going to make that door rattle. All right, so you disprove everything else around, and a good investigation team is going to come in and they're going to do that. They're going to look at everything, they're not going to jump at shadows, they're going to use meters, they're going to use whatever they've got to work out what is in the space. What I find really interesting is when you disprove everything, then you can only be left with, it's come from a ghost. So in my world, an investigation is you go in, be open to what you receive, test out the theory, look at what's happening, and then when all their boxes are ticked, you can say, right, well, this is the spirit I've got, this is what they look like, this is what they're telling me. You connect up and you talk to them, just like you would any other spirit. And from that information, then you go away and check that it's accurate.
Anthony, do you have a good story to share?
I do. I have a lot of stories because I've been doing it for quite a while. However, probably the best story is one where I met a spirit called Marianne. Now, she was what we call a corporal being, in that she could come and go at will. She wasn't stuck anywhere. And I met her at a mansion and one night, and I got a sense of her being there. She was about 13 years old. She had polio. She was alive here in Victoria in the sort of early 1800s. And she just had this really lovely presence about her. However, she was really quite scared of some of the other people on our team. And I went into the room that she stayed in. She told me about staying there. And on the bed, which was sitting there, I started playing my Native American flute. And I played that, and I just got a sense of her getting up, and she got up on the bed. And then she started dancing on the bed. And everybody in our team, including the cameraman, was able to film the hand and the footprints as she moved around on the bed. Now that was pretty beautiful, and I thought maybe a big once off. However, when we went back to start doing tours at this place, I would make the bed in front of them, pull it all tight, all the rest of it. I'd talk to Marianne, explain the story, then I'd play the flute again, and they would see, not every time, but just about every time we did an investigation, one of the groups would see it, and she would get up and she would dance on the bed. Now the really beautiful thing about that was when we were communicating, she said, I don't really like the music you're playing. And I said to her, well, you tell me what you would like to play, what like me to play. And so she put the sound in my head and I started playing it. And when I got it right, and I started calling it Marianne's Waltz, and that's what it was. It was a waltz done on the flute. And so I can go and play that anywhere, and quite often people, without telling them the story, will go, I saw this young girl dancing around you. How amazing. and that's who it was. So that's just one of the more beautiful stories, and even to this day, Marianne comes around when I play the flute.
Wow, that's a really gorgeous story. Thanks, Anthony. What would you recommend our audience do if they have a feeling that something's not quite right in their house?
If it is a ghost, then you'd get a medium in or someone in to be able to sit down and try and connect with that spirit. And again, the objective is to help them to move on. The main thing really that I say to people is keep a diary, a record of the occurrences. And that's really important for a whole lot of reasons. So if I go into a place and they can say to me, look, every Saturday night at 12:45, this door bangs, this light goes on, that happens, then I know I've got to be there at that time of night to make it happen. So the more we know and the timing and what's going on, the more we can then target, okay, we need to be here. And sometimes if there's a lot of energy in a house, especially with kids, it might not even be a ghost. It might be an elemental being that's coming through. So good research on the people you want to bring into your home to help you to clear it and understand what's going on is essential to a good result.
Thanks for such rich information, Anthony. If you'd like to know more about Anthony Kilner and how ghost investigations work, please go to his webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we have another interesting guest with another interesting topic. After the break, breathwork expert and life coach Christine Hart-Savage will be talking about reversing stress and burnout. Welcome back. And our next guest is breathwork and life coach Christine Hart-Savage, and the topic we'll be discussing today is reversing stress and burnout. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you for having me again, Megan.
Christine, can you describe stress and burnout for us?
They're two different things. So stress is something that builds up inside your body. So we often don't know we're stressed. So we go out into the world and something happens that we don't like or we're uncomfortable about it. And instead of allowing that emotion or expressing ourselves well, we tend to go into a little bit of shock and hold our breath a little bit, and whatever's going on at the time, that emotion we're feeling, the thoughts that we're having, when we hold our breath, it gets trapped inside the body. So then we go home and the next morning we get up, we go back out into life and we have some other stressful things happen and it starts to accumulate in the body. So stress literally builds inside us, it builds in the body. And the cells, the cellular memory holds it. And if we think of stress as an energy, so we've got life force or energy flowing through us, and every time we have a stress moment, it's like that part of that energy becomes crystallized. It becomes like a little marble that is blocked inside the body. So that builds up. So in the end, we can feel like the stress has got to such a point that we are a pressure cooker. So burnout is when the stress keeps building and building and building and building and building to the point where you are really full. That is burnout. Now that's very serious, because if we don't do something about burnout or stress at that point, we end up getting sick. And the other thing that can happen is when someone's really at burnout or breakdown point, as I call it, we're so reactive. It's like, it just comes up and these bursts, these outbursts take us over. So we're very emotionally charged. So we need to bring that down too, because not only is it not good for our health, it's no good for the people around us.
Christine, can burnout happen to anyone?
Most definitely. The thing with burnout too, strong people keep soldiering on. So we feel some stress, some pressure, and you wake up, you say, okay, you push it over there, and you just get on with the day, next day, the following day. And as it's building and building, you get to a point where it's almost impossible to keep going, but strong people do. They keep pushing through it. I can do this, and they don't get help. I find that the people that I see mostly for this burnout, that when they've got to this point where they really are not coping, are people that run their own businesses, lawyers, doctors as well, and people that really are very professional because they keep going and going and going. Even university professors I've had, they don't know where to turn, they don't know what to do. And the other thing with this, when we can have burnout or really strong anxiety and panic attacks, it's often people in the media. So people that are on television that are really confident and they're great, you would never think that they're suffering from burnout or panic. Also people like radio jocks that are on radio, that are out there, that are funny, that are speaking to people. On a break, they might have to run into the toilet and try and get their breath because they're having panic attacks. So it can affect anybody. It doesn't matter where they're from, who they are, what they do in life. Burnout is a build-up of stress in the body and the mind.
Christine, is there anything you recommend that people can do if they believe they're experiencing burnout, or tips and tricks on how to prevent burnout?
When we have burnout, the stress is built up to such a point that in the end you have separated off from yourself. So you're disconnecting from who you are, you're disconnecting from yourself. Now when that happens, you're also disconnecting from the people in your life. You're disconnecting from the world, basically. So it's a very lonely journey. And it's because we're blocked. We've got all of this stress in the way. So what we need to do, when you get to this point of burnout, we need to do a deeper type of releasing. So there's two things that I would suggest people do. One is something like a deeper sort of breathwork therapy. So that's a deeper process of breathing where it takes you into an altered state of consciousness. You go beyond your conscious mind and your body relaxes like crazy, because as you're breathing, your energy field is opening up, opening up, opening up. That means every cell inside you is taking on new energy and oxygen, and that is also unfolding and opening up. And all the blockages caught in those cells then start to be released. So the person will experience different tensions and tingling and vibration and maybe emotion coming up. And every time they do this type of session, they're releasing more of that tension. So that means they're reconnecting with themselves again, bit by bit. It's a very powerful way to release what you have built up inside the cellular level of the body. Our bodies are so intelligent. Our minds are intelligent, but we're quite blocked. The thing that I find is that we're fragmented. So the mind is saying one thing, the emotions are something else, the body's in tension, and the soul or the spirit we're all out of whack. When you do deep breathwork therapy, it brings you more into alignment. That's why people feel this incredible calm come over them towards the end of the session, because they're lining up between their spirit or soul, their mind, their emotions, and their body. And when they leave, they can go out into the world feeling much more relaxed and much more connected to themselves and in balance. So that type of therapy is what people need to start releasing, that deeper cellular level of burnout. We need to really reverse that burnout. And then as well as that, I would suggest people have a daily program. And they definitely need to learn to breathe correctly, so they need to find a good breathing coach. And I know one of those. And also have a meditation program as well. So that might sound like a lot, but it's not.
Thanks, Christine, for such wonderful stories and wonderful information.
Thank you, Megan. It's always a pleasure to be here.
If you'd like to know more about reversing stress and burnout and Christine Hart-Savage, go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And that's it for today, and we'll say bye-bye until next week.
If you'd like to know more about our show, please like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel.